Hey, it's 2022, and today, in honor of 2022, we're going to be doing not one, but two pots of chicken and dumplings. And one of those chicken and dumplings is going to be the old-fashioned chicken and dumplings. We're going to be cooking chicken, we're going to be making our own bone broth, we're going to be throwing in a little bit of chicken breast, making the rollout dumplings just like your grandma used to make. Maybe you still make them too, but if you don't, you're gonna learn how today. And then in the other pot, back here on the stove right here at Pine Hill Cabin, we are going to be making the instant, what I call instant chicken and dumplings. And it's sort of like taking a bag of potatoes, peeling them, cutting them up, washing them, cooking them, putting in all that good stuff that makes them so good when you make mashed potatoes, or making instant mashed potatoes. We all know that the real stuff is the best, but sometimes you just want it fast, you want it now, and instant is pretty good for that as well. So learn how to make two different styles of chicken and dumplings today in this episode of Pine Hill Cookin', coming to you right here from Pine Hill Cabin. I'm glad that you're here with us today. So come along and we'll be starting to cook here in just a second. So the first thing that I want to do is start out with the ingredients that you're going to need for the instant, what I call instant chicken and dumplings. And it's a really fast, really easy recipe. If you've never done this before, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, why didn't I know how to do this? Because it tastes so good, even though it is very fast and very easy. To do this, all you need is some chicken broth, some canned chicken. I've heard some people get a rotisserie chicken, take the meat off of it and stick that in there, but if you want super fast and easy, just use canned chicken. You're gonna need some cream of chicken soup, and for the dumplings, you're gonna need some Bisquick. Now, also, for this instant, you're going to need something to give it just a little bit more chicken flavor, and so I always throw in a cube or two of chicken bouillon just to make it really, really tasty. Next, we're gonna go over the ingredients for the old-fashioned chicken and dumplings. So for the old-fashioned chicken and dumplings, you're gonna need, of course, some chicken. Now, whenever I make chicken and dumplings this way, I always put in chicken legs. The reason why is because the chicken legs have the bones so that you can get bone broth, okay? That's gonna be your richest tasting, delicious broth that you can have for your chicken and dumplings. My wife doesn't like dark meat, so I always have some chicken breast as well. And I'm gonna cut some of this up to throw in there also, just so that there's some white meat in there as well. The chicken bones with the legs and the chicken breast in the water with some salt is gonna make our chicken broth. So we don't need to buy chicken broth for this or chicken bouillon, because all the flavor is gonna come from the actual chicken. And then after that, all we have to do is just take the chicken out, shred it up, and take it off the bone, and then we're gonna make the old-fashioned rolled out dumplings. For the instant easy ones, we're gonna do drop dumplings. Now the old-fashioned ones are gonna be made out of flour and butter, just like they would make in the past. The instant ones are gonna be made out of Bisquick, and then we're just gonna drop them in. So two different types of dumplings that we're gonna do today, two different types of chicken and dumplings. So stick with us, we're getting ready to cook right now. So what I suggest when you make the old-fashioned chicken and dumplings is go out to the store whenever they have chicken legs on sale, buy them, freeze them, and then you can always de-thaw them. Whenever you can find chicken legs on sale or even chicken breast on sale, go ahead and buy that up and freeze it. It'll keep for a while in the freezer. So I'm gonna take the lid off of our pot that we have for the old-fashioned ones, and I'm gonna go ahead and put in some chicken legs so that we can be cooking those. I just put in the whole chicken legs, and we're gonna put in, let's see how many we have in here. There's 3, 4, and 5 chicken legs. And so that's what I'm gonna be using today to make my old-fashioned chicken and dumplings. So I'm gonna add some water to this and some salt, and we're gonna get it cooking right here so we can go ahead and get that cooked and get our dumplings made. So you're gonna notice that back here on the stove, I have 2 pots. I have this pot right here, the taller one, my Paula Deen one, for my old-fashioned chicken and dumplings, and then I have this one, which is actually a Dutch oven, cast iron Dutch oven. I love this thing. And we're gonna use this one to make the instant chicken and dumplings. So what I'm gonna do right now is just start off with the old-fashioned chicken and dumplings because it's gonna take a lot longer to make. So what I'm doing right now is just I'm adding some water to the chicken so that it covers the chicken. Like I said, the reason that we're using chicken legs is because the bones. And the bones is what's going to give the chicken broth its really good flavor. You want to really cook this chicken, make sure it's good and done. But also that gives the flavor time to leach out of the bones into the broth. And you have a nice chicken bone broth for your chicken and dumplings. If you don't give it time to do that, then you're not going to have really flavorful chicken and dumplings. And that's what a lot of people forget. They know that the chicken has to be cooked, that's true, but you have to make sure that the chicken bones are cooked into the broth. So you want to make sure that you have a good amount of water in there, because as this cooks, it's going to, of course, simmer down and reduce. So don't be afraid to go on ahead and put in a lot of water. I'm not going to put too much more water because I can always add a little bit more as we go along. That looks good. I'm going to go on ahead and get this up on a high setting. And then I'm going to add some salt to this so that we can have a good flavorful chicken. Let me see if I find the salt up here. Here we go. And I don't measure this, I just put in some salt, not too much. You can always add more salt later, but you need some salt in there to make the flavor of the chicken come out. I'm gonna cover this, let that come to a boil, and while that's doing that, I'm gonna get my chicken breast. And I think this is a huge pack of chicken breast. I'm only gonna probably use about 3 chicken breasts on this, and then I'm gonna put the rest in the freezer. So I don't know about you, but whenever I'm working with chicken breast, because the flavor for the chicken and dumplings is going to be coming from the chicken legs and the bones itself and not the breast, I always like to trim off this part, the fat and some of the gristle that you see right in here. So I'm going to trim all of this off, and if you see on the underside, I'm going to trim this part off and this part. And I know a lot of people say, well, you get a lot of flavor from that. That's true, but in this case, we're gonna be getting the flavor from the chicken legs. And there are people in this household who do not like it if this part of the chicken is cooked in with the chicken and dumplings. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim that off. I'm gonna cut this up, just make sure that you have a good quality knife. And that you are not afraid to use it. So I'm gonna be trimming that off, chunking this up, and once this is chunked up, I'm gonna put it in with chicken legs to cook, and we'll see what we have after that. So now that I have this chicken pretty much trimmed, I'm not gonna trim this little piece right here before I do it. The way that I'm gonna cut this up is I'm just gonna cut right down the center, just like that, and then I'm gonna go across just like this, and I'm going to be chunking the chicken into pretty big chunks, because after it's cooked, then I can shred it up for the chicken and dumplings. Some people like to put whole big chunks of chicken in their chicken and dumplings, but I like to shred it. And so once you get all of the chicken defatted, is what we call it, and cleaned, what I told you is I just went right down the middle, and then I just sliced it this way so that we have nice big chunks of white chicken breast. I'm gonna do that for the other 2 chicken breasts that I have, and after that I'm gonna put it in with the chicken legs so that it can all cook together. And there we go, the chicken is all cut up, it's all ready to go. And all I'm gonna have to do now is just put it into this pot so that we can have some nice chicken and dumplings. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so I'm gonna take this off, and you'll see that the chicken legs are already starting to cook a little bit. They're getting hot. I'm gonna take the chicken breast, I'm just gonna dump that right in. Oh, it's sort of sticky. There we go. And make sure you get all that nice chicken in there to cook with the chicken legs. I'm gonna give that a quick stir. And the salted water. There's our chicken legs down in there. And we're going to let that cook a pretty long time. I'm gonna check it again here in a little bit and see if it starts boiling. But while we're doing that, let's go ahead and make our instant chicken. Okay, so to do my instant chicken, like I said, we're gonna start off with the already made for us chicken broth. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna pour it into the pan. Just open it up. And I'm gonna swing this around so that you all can see. And all I am doing is just gonna pour this right in. Nice and easy, just like that. And because I want a little bit more than that, I'm gonna actually use 2 things of chicken broth. So I'm gonna take the other thing of chicken broth, shake it up a little bit, pour that in as well. Here we go. Now I'm not gonna use all of this chicken broth. I'm gonna save some of it to put in the dumplings. But we have a good amount. So what I'm gonna do now is just go ahead and turn that on and let that get to getting hot. Turn that on high until it starts boiling, then I can turn it down. Now for the instant chicken and dumplings, I've got the broth in already, and I'm gonna go on ahead and be letting that warm up to a boil. Now to give that some extra chickeny flavor, remember what I said, we're going to be taking some chicken bouillon. And I just get this wherever I can find it cheapest. I got this at Dollar General. So here we have our chicken bouillon. I've unwrapped 2 cubes and I've got them sitting right here, ready to put in as soon as this comes to a boil. I'm also going to be adding 1 can of cream of chicken. So cream of chicken, chicken broth, and chicken bouillon is going to give our instant chicken a really good chickeny flavor for the broth. So let's go ahead and wait for that to come to a boil, and then I'll be adding this in, letting that come to a boil with our canned chicken. And while we're waiting on that to cook, let's check over here with our other chicken. It's still boiling really good. It's not quite there yet, although the broth is starting to look really good. So while we're still waiting on this chicken and chicken broth to cook, we're gonna go back to our instant chicken and dumplings. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, this chicken broth has been back here. It's starting to come to a nice hot boil. It's almost there. So what I'm gonna do is go on ahead and add in the 2 chicken bouillon. This is gonna give our chicken and dumplings some really good flavor. And I'm gonna go ahead and just take the rest of this, save it for another pot on another day. It's also really good in chicken soup. Then I'm gonna take my cream of chicken soup. Just good old condensed cream of chicken soup, and we're gonna add that in as well. This makes it a little thicker and also gives it some really good chicken flavor. Now, if you want to come up here and get a shot of this, I have a Zoe Rice here today is my camera person. So thank you, Zoe Rice. We're going to stir this in, and where I added some of the soup and stuff, it lost the boil. So we're going to stir this in really good, and then we're going to cover it and let it come back to a boil. But before I do that, let's add 2 cans of canned chicken. Like I said, this is almost like instant mashed potatoes because everything's done for you already. It's just heat and eat. So here we go with another can of chicken. We'll stir this in, and then while that's coming to a boil, I'm gonna make some instant drop dumplings that we're gonna put in here. Let it cook in thorough. And then this is done. Like I said, instant mashed potatoes, instant chicken and dumplings. Okay, so now it's time to make our instant drop dumplings. They're gonna be great with the instant chicken and dumplings. So what I have in here is 2.5 cups of Bisquick. Bisquick is great for this because it cooks up easy and it's light and fluffy. Drop dumplings are really good for them. Now my secret to really good drop dumplings is, in addition to putting milk, I'm gonna put a splash, just a splash of buttermilk. And I'm gonna put a splash, just a splash, I don't measure it. You can sort of splash it out yourself, of chicken broth into the dumplings itself. Then, 2/3 cup of milk goes in with the 2.5 cups of biscuit. Now this is sort of eyeball, and if you can get the bowl in there, what I'm gonna do is stir this up until it's not dry looking. I want it to be wet and doughy looking. So I can see already that this is going to be too dry. So I'm gonna add a little bit more milk. Let's see how this looks. Cooking is and is not an exact science. You follow the recipe, and then if it doesn't look exactly the way you want to, you can add a little bit more until it just looks exactly right. Now I'm just gonna add a little bit more buttermilk. Let's stir this up and see how it looks. It's almost there. It is almost where I want it to be. You want it to be wet looking. And that is wet looking right there, but it's still not as thin as I would like it. So I'm gonna add one more splash of chicken broth, just a splash, a little at a time. You can always add more, but it's hard to get it back out once you put it in there. And then what they say with carpentry, measure twice, cut once. So, or in my case, don't measure at all. And just stick it in there. There we go. Now this is going to make delicious, light and fluffy drop dumplings. It should look something like this on the spoon. Right? So that you can take it up a little at a time. So the chicken broth in the instant chicken and dumplings, like I like to call it, is almost to a boil, so we're almost ready. Let's check on the other part. I'm still cooking the chicken. So here's my pot of chicken that I'm cooking, the chicken leg, the chicken breast. It is almost done and ready to take that out and debone the chicken. I can tell because there is a nice layer of flavor right up there that I'm gonna scrape down into the pot. But before I do that, let's go over here and check our broth flavor, and you can see that that is a nice boil. So I'm gonna turn that down so it's not such a hard boil, just a soft boil, and I'm gonna drop in the dumplings and let them cook. So let's turn that down to about 7, and let's put in the dumplings. These are gonna be done before the chicken's even done on the other ones. I'm going to take the lid off of my others. When you make dumplings like this, it's very important that you do not stir. Do not stir. So I'm just going to start taking these and dropping them in to the boiling mixture. And oh, you're going to want to stir it. But if you want really good, fluffy, light dumplings that do not dissolve, you are not going to stir them.
No.
So here I go with putting these in here. These are going to be really big, really light, really delicious dumplings. Once these cook 5 to 10 minutes until they're done, you'll want to take one out and check it, and we will here in just a minute. Then this dish is ready to eat. Like I said, easy, fast, just like instant potatoes. It's good. It's not the old-fashioned, but it's good. And you're gonna love these dumplings. Now sometimes I'll do the drop dumplings with the old-fashioned chicken as well, just because it's a lot faster, and I really like the light fluffy dumplings that go with it. And the good thing about this is if you eat up all the dumplings, then you can always just, like a second day, add a little bit more chicken broth to it. Get it boiling, make some more dumpling mix, stick it in there, and you're good to go. So there we go. Those are already starting to cook. And you can see that right there. I'm not gonna cover it. I'm just gonna let it cook. And then we'll see how they look here in just about 10 minutes. Okay, so while the dumplings and the instant chicken dumplings are cooking, because I don't want to stir them anyway, because that's just going to ruin them, I'm going to go on ahead and I'm going to turn down, not turn off, but turn down this chicken. I'm going to turn it down to a low. I don't want to turn it completely off because I don't want it to lose all of its heat. While it does that, I'm going to take out all of the chicken. I'm going to put it in a bowl. I'm going to debone the chicken legs, and I'm going to take the chicken breast and I'm going to shred it. Let me show you a really simple, really easy way to shred chicken. If you've never done shredded chicken this way, you are not gonna believe your eyes. If you have, you're gonna be like, ugh, we knew that all along. So here we go. So what I have here is my chicken legs and my chicken breasts. I've got those out of the broth. You can see they are steaming hot. So I'm gonna let those cool before I try to shred them and get the chicken meat off the bone. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to be making my old-fashioned dumplings that I'm actually going to roll out and cut and drop into the broth the old-fashioned way. But before we do that, let's take a look at our instant chicken and dumplings because I think they are ready to eat. Okay, so here is my pot. I just went on ahead and turned it off of chicken and dumplings the instant way. I'm going to go ahead and get one of these out on a plate. And let's see, I think these are going to be awesome and good to go. Look at this, this is a nice big one. Let's put it right here on the plate. We'll just let the others stay in the pot to cool. It's okay to give them a little stir now because they are cooked. They're not going to dissolve on you. I wouldn't get in there and beat them. And let's look at this dumpling. I'll move this chicken out of the way so that it can cool. Let me get a fork. And let's cut this open. And you can see it is all the way done. It is ready to go. Now you have that mixed in with some of that chicken broth that you have over there. You know that is going to be awesome. Let's just taste it to see. Here's the real test. So good. I'm going to get a plate out and we'll have a taste tester come over and see what they think. Okay, so I'm going to have our taste tester, James Rice, right over there. I'm going to ladle him up some of my delicious instant chicken and dumplings. I'm going to make sure I get some nice big dumplings in there for him. And some of the chicken in there as well. Now, doesn't that look delicious? Let me set this over here. Here's our taste tester. And a spoon, my good sir. And tell me what you think of the instant chicken and dumplings. All right, thumbs up. Awesome. So the instant chicken and dumplings are done, and we're starting to get the chicken ready for the old-fashioned chicken and dumplings. And while that's cooling, like I said, let me go on ahead and get the dumplings made for the broth. Okay, so while our chicken is cooling and Mr. Rice is enjoying his chicken and dumplings, I'm going to start on the roll out, cut out, and mark it with a Z. No. What I'm going to do is make the old-fashioned dumplings, not the drop dumplings. So what I have in here is 2 cups of flour. And in this 2 cups of flour, I'm going to put in a half teaspoon, find my handy dandy half teaspoon, of baking powder. Not baking soda, but baking powder. And so once I do that, get that good measured out, half teaspoon right in with the flour. And then I'm gonna put in a cup of milk. But before I do that, I'm gonna put in a splash of buttermilk. Just a splash. I like to put in a little splash. And once you get the dogs to stop barking during your video, you can go ahead and add in 1 cup, oops, not buttermilk. I've already added in my buttermilk. I'm gonna add in 1 cup of regular milk. And if you're wondering why it's in a jar, it's because I ran out of regular milk. So I went around to my mom's and she gave me some milk. So I'm gonna add in 1 cup of regular milk. Okay. Then I have 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And I'm gonna go ahead and, it's cold, you wanna make sure it's cold, and put that in there as well. Then you just take your hands and mix it all in until it forms a dough. So I'm gonna be doing that next. Okay, so don't be afraid. My hands are freshly washed, really clean. I'm just gonna take the butter and I'm just gonna smush it in. This is the fun part, right? Get it all in there with the dough and the milk, and make a nice, yummy dough mixture. Don't be afraid, because if it looks too runny, guess what? You can always add more flour. So we're just going to keep doing this until we get a nice dough ball. Make sure that you do wash your hands before you do this though. And just make sure that that butter is all incorporated and smushed in with the flour. Just like this. And then we're ready to flour our counter. Once we get that done, roll this out. And then we're going to roll it out to about 1/4 inch thickness, and we're going to cut it into squares. And they don't have to be perfect, because this is country cooking. This is not perfect cooking. And then we're going to make sure that our broth is boiling, and then we're going to be dropping it into the boiling broth to cook. We're not going to have the chicken in there at the same time. We're going to cook the dumplings, and then once those have cooked for about 15 or 20 minutes, they take a little bit longer to cook. Then we're going to have the chicken shredded, and we're going to add that in as the last step and just let it heat through to finish off our old style chicken and dumplings. This looks like it's about ready to roll out, so you'll want to make sure that you flour your counter really well, because it is sticky, and flour your hands, and don't be afraid to add more flour as needed. So that's our next step. Let's go on to that one. Okay, so I have my surface floured. I'm going to go ahead and take my dough ball, and I'm going to put that down there. Let me get rid of this bowl real fast. I'm going to take some flour, just a little bit, and sprinkle on the top. No exact measurement. And you can use a rolling pin for this, but I like to do it by feel. It just makes it, seems like it just makes it feel better to me. I can sort of judge by using my hands about how thick it is. Just make sure it's not thicker in the center than it is on the sides. Sort of like when I do my pizza crust. Now you don't want it as thin as a pizza crust. Like I said, about 1/4 inch, and so luckily I teach 2nd grade, so I have a really good knowledge of that, because we do that a lot. Centimeters and inches. So my kids, if you're watching at home, here's an out of the classroom experience for you on measurement. You can eyeball a 1/4 inch. Now these look like they're ready to cut. So all I'm gonna do is get a knife. Make sure that you always have a really good sharp knife. And I'm just gonna start cutting. I might want to flour my knife before I do that so it doesn't stick. Make sure you don't run your hand down the sharp side. Okay, and I'm just going to start cutting squares. Now if you have a pizza cutter, you could do this with the pizza cutter. And look how nicely these are cutting out right here. Today, looking really, really nice. So let's go on ahead and keep cutting our dumplings up. Like I said, these do not have to be perfect. You just want them to have a general, nice shape. So I'm gonna go over this time. A nice square shape. These are not gonna be the fluffy dumplings like you just saw. These are going to be the flat dumplings. And they're coming really nicely. Now, before I put them in the pot, I'm gonna go back over there and I'm gonna turn that back up on high to get it boiling. Once it starts boiling, so see, you can see here's your dumpling. It should look something like this, flat, square dumpling, just like this. It'll take about 20 minutes for these to cook, anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. I would check them after 15 minutes, take one out and see if it's done and not doughy in the middle. And if it is, just let it cook another 5 minutes and check it again, and then just check it every minute or two after that if they're not completely the way that you want them. So I'm gonna go over. I am going to heat up the broth, and then we'll drop these in, and while they're cooking, I'll show you that really cool way to shred chicken. Okay, so one last thing that you want to do before you put the dumplings in, and I know this may seem like a little bit of overkill, is just sprinkle them with just a little bit of flour on top. Now, this is going to serve two purposes. It's going to keep them from sticking together, and it's also going to thicken up the chicken broth when you add them to it. So I'm just doing it by eye, just a little dusting of flour on top before we add them to the chicken broth. Now, unlike the other ones, we're going to add these one at a time because we don't want them to stick together. Okay, I'm getting ready to check. Our broth has almost come to a boil again. I went on ahead and scraped down the sides so I can get all of that flavor in there. So while this comes to a full boil, remember, you don't want to stick your dumplings in there until it is coming to a full boil. So I'm going to cover this back up, let this come to a full boil. Notice I still have my dumplings over here. They are ready to go. You don't have to transfer them to a plate or anything. And they have been dusted with that coat of flour so that they will thicken up as they go into the chicken broth. Okay, so let's check our chicken broth again, and you can see it is at a nice boil. So I'm going to turn it down just a little bit, and then we're going to add these. And like I said, you want to add these just one at a time. So I'm just going to take these, and I'm just going to be sticking those in, just like that. You don't want to add a big bunch in together, because if you do, they're going to clump into a big clump. So I'm just sort of going to go around. Now these are going to sink, and they may float up to the top after they cook for a while, then they may sink back down again. That's fine, but you want to let these cook for about 20 minutes. So I'm going to go on ahead, I'm going to get the rest of these in, just a few at a time, just like this. Just drop them in. And then while those are cooking, I'm going to show you how to shred up the chicken. And so here's my secret for perfectly shredded chicken. A blender, right, or mixer. All you have to do is just put your mixer down in your chicken. Now this can get a little messy, so don't worry if some of it cleans out. But as this goes around, it's going to take all of the chicken in. If some comes out, stick it back in. Done, you're going to have perfectly shredded chicken. I use this mixer method when I make barbecue chicken as well, or barbecue pork, because it will also mix up really well with the mixer. So this is good to go back into the chicken and dumplings. But let's test out the dumplings and see how they are doing. So it's been about 20 minutes. I did cover these up for just a little bit. And you can see there are the dumplings in there. I'm going to take one out and we can check it to see if it is done. Because if this one right here is done, then I'm going to say that they all are done. So I'm going to take this one, and then we will put it right there. And let's cut it open. and see how it looks. So here is the ultimate test. Okay, if we look right in there, it's not doughy. It's cooked all the way through. You can see right there, no dough at all. It's soaked up the chicken broth. And let's taste it to see how it tastes. Sorry about the camera work. So here we go. Good. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper to taste. Those will be perfect. So now, all you have to do is take your chicken, add it back into your chicken and dumplings. These are cooked, so they're not going to dissolve. Go ahead and stir that in. Let that cook and thicken up a little bit. If it's not as thick as you want it, you can add a little bit more flour to the broth and let it thicken up before you serve it. But these should be good to go. And there we go. Instant chicken and dumplings, old-fashioned chicken and dumplings, whichever way you choose to cook, whether you're short on time or you have a longer time to cook. Both ways are going to be really, really good. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Pine Hill Cookin' right here in Pine Hill Cabin in Lost Creek, Kentucky. Let me know how your chicken and dumplings turned out. I'd love to hear from you. I love the feedback. Everyone have a great day. Keep cooking, keep smiling. Have a great day.